Good afternoon in New York, Eastern North America and Mexico. Good morning, middle and the western part. Good evening in Europe, Kenya and Africa as a whole. And welcome whatever time of day or night you are joining this important webinar from all corners of the world. I'm Yael Danieli, founder and executive director of the International Center for Multi-Generational Legacies of Trauma, ICMGLT for short. Thank you for joining our webinar on Indigenous Peoples' Right to Self-Determination, a pathway for food security and sovereignty. This International Center for Multi-Generational Legacies of Trauma webinar is held in recognition of International Day of the World's Indigenous People, which is observed annually on August 9, and its 2025 theme as well. Our web panelists are experts on indigenous community solutions to govern their own lands and resources without external interference. We will learn about innovative programs in the First Nations of Canada, rural Mexico, and Kenya, all working towards engaging the power of traditional wisdom and ensuring safety and security for their communities. Your moderator, I am a clinical psychologist, traumatologist, victimologist, and psychohistorian. Having developed the first program to help Nazi Holocaust survivors and their children in the 1970s, I have devoted much of my career to studying, treating, writing about, and preventing lifelong and multi-generational impacts of massive trauma worldwide, to ensuring victims' rights, the rights of future generations, and to reparative justice. My version of psychohistory is to conceive of it as we live it now, not as a list of past dates, events, and numbers, but as it shapes our decisions and ways of being and healing today. Today's first speaker is Daniel Kobei. Daniel is founder and executive director of the Ogiek Peoples Development Program, a Kenyan NGO advancing the land and human rights of indigenous peoples. Mr. Kobei is a dedicated human rights defender with deep expertise on indigenous issues. He notably led the Ogiek to a landmark 2017 victory against the Kenyan government in the African Court on Human and People's Rights in Arusha, Tanzania. Our second speaker today is Alexis Ford Ellis, a Gwich'in woman, grew up in a substance-using environment, lived through a lot of trauma, and now walks a journey of wellness. Alexis is Director, Mental Health and Wellness at the KCIL. In 2010, she completed her master's degree with her research, How is the Medicine Wheel Considered in Therapeutic Practice?, published on September 2019. Alexis brings a wealth of expertise and lived experience in delivering mental health messages. Third is Dr. Leslie Korn, who founded the Center for Traditional Medicine in 1975 in rural indigenous Mexico, providing clinical care and supporting the colonial project in nutrition trauma in food sovereignty. She has produced documentaries on traditional foods and medicine and authored 9 books, including Rhythm of Recovery, Integrative Medicine for PTSD or Complex Trauma, and Nutrition Essentials for Mental Health. She is the Director of Research at the Center for World Indigenous Studies. Looks like the ICMGLT's library will gain quite a bit from these 2 amazing women. Last but not least is ICMGLT's board member, Andre Laperriere, an expert in international development, populations, displacements, and hunger, with degrees in administration and industrial relations. Canadian Mr. Laperriere worked for over 18 years, mostly with the United Nations, in conflict and post-conflict areas on 3 continents, with refugees and internally displaced persons, including in Eritrea, Ethiopia, Haiti, Iraq, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. He is the first executive director of the Trust Fund for Victims of the International Criminal Court. Before I describe the webinar itself, I would like to honor the woman most responsible for this webinar, Dr. Mary Fabry, ICMGLT board member and focal points for Indigenous people. We have an hour and a half for the webinar, though we have been known for a most engaged audience who keeps us longer. Each of our presenters will speak for about 10 minutes. Following an interchange among us, I will open the floor for questions or brief comments from the virtual audience, which also has a few surprises today. I will then invite our panelists to conclude today's webinar with their last words. Please use the Q&A or chat function, and we will do our best to respond to as many questions and brief comments as we can. Feel free to direct your question to a particular panelist or to the full panel. I now have the honor of welcoming Daniel Kobei. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I feel privileged, and thank you for the viewers, those who are following across the globe. I feel really privileged to be in this very people with a lot of wealth of knowledge on various issues. And from the activism part of it, where learn is key, I take this as a very serious honor, especially remembering the Indigenous People Day that was on 9th. So I think 9th is not too far. So I think we can be allowed to still continue with remembering and celebrating with the International Indigenous Peoples World Day. And as you talk of Indigenous peoples, I think it is always in Africa, it has different definition. And the African Commission on Human and People's Rights came up with a way of defining Indigenous peoples in Africa. And basically, they zeroed in on issues of pastoralism, hunter-gatherers, and fisher folks mostly. And they listed because of their way of living. In many countries, they have already listed who can be considered. But all that said, there's still a lot to be discussed about Indigenous people. Personally, I'm an Indigenous person from Kenya, born and brought up in Mau Forest Complex. And I've seen a lot of changes metamorphosis of life, being in the forest, going to school, and coming up with a way and talking about the self-determination of indigenous peoples. And before I go to my PowerPoint, I feel it is always great to really say that understanding self-determination is something which we cannot ignore, as it is also under the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which affirm the indigenous people have the right to freely determine their political status, free to pursue economic status, social and cultural development. Having brought up from the Ogiek community, we have been fighting for our land rights, which is one way. We cannot talk about food when you don't talk about land. And you cannot talk about rights of people when your land rights are not in order. So land tenure system is key to food sovereignty. Land tenure system is also is seen as a lot of connectivity with indigenous peoples. You cannot talk about indigenous peoples without talking about land and territories. You cannot talk about them and talking about their food system even when they are dispossessed in their land, when they are evicted, when they are not in their land and territories. So in this case, therefore, we are talking about a very serious issue. But what is in Africa? Africa food system is changing rapidly. It is being, people are living their old, or rather their traditional food system so fast because they are saying they grow the food system, they grow so slowly that they are not growing fast. And I always ask, now that people are now being given food, relief food, where is the relief food coming from? How come this relief food, most of them are linked to GMOs, they are linked to many things which undermine the health of indigenous peoples. And for us, we have seen.
Daniel, may I interrupt for 1 second? I believe you, at some point, you have PowerPoints that you want to share. Is it
Yes,
now
I will
or
come to
later?
it. I'll come to it.
Whenever.
Yeah,
just thank you. I just
yes,
wanted to make sure that, yeah.
I am quite aware because
Sorry
of
about
the
that.
time. I find it giving the story more interesting than the
Okay.
PowerPoint.
Okay.
Yes.
Fair enough.
So yeah. So the indigenous peoples and the food system is whereby we have a big challenge, because now we are trying to develop, and for us, the Ogiek Peoples Development Program, where I'm the director, we are developing what we call agroecology and support, as working closely with the counties. So far, we are working with the Nakuru County, trying to develop agroecology policies. We are also going into work with the Narok County, and we are also working with other partners, the Maasai people in Laikipia, and we are also trying to promote policies for indigenous food system. To the surprise of many of us is that we have realized that in Africa, people are living their own food system, or rather, they are ignoring completely. And this has led to a lot of health issues. They have created a lot of problems. And these have made them now, the health issues of indigenous peoples are in question. Now they are suffering with a lot of health-related issues because of lifestyle, which was not there before. In Africa, I think our lifespan is rather very small, and not like many Western countries. And it is because we have changed so fast. When you introduce any food, and maybe I'm sorry to say, maybe most of them are being done a lot of research in Africa, and it has become very, very serious. When I go through, I'll screen shortly. Sorry. I will try and share my PowerPoint. which is I think it has disappeared. So it was good that I didn't go to it.
Robbie, can you help him? Okay.
Yeah, I think you just move on. I think most of the okay, there you are. I think I've already why that for indigenous people, food is not just a commodity. It is sacred and is part of our relationship with our earth, with our ancestors, and for future generations. When indigenous people have control over their land and natural resources, they thrive. We protect biodiversity through traditional farming, foraging system. We adapt to climate change using indigenous knowledge, traditional knowledge. We feed our communities without depending on external aid. Unfortunately, nowadays, you hear a lot of people in Africa are now getting relief food. And you will ask yourself what was happening many years ago when there were no people bringing food to shipping food across the oceans. Were we dying? No. We were surviving because we knew how to survive. Go ahead, please. So today, many indigenous communities face hunger, not because of their knowledge, but because of lack of access to land, water, forest, and freedom to make decisions about their land. And I've mentioned that in the opening, Dr. Danieli mentioned that we did a lot of land-related issues, challenges, where we went to court and we won two major landmark cases in Africa. But unfortunately, until today, we are still fighting to have this judgment implemented. But let's be clear, there can be no food security without land security and land rights, and no food for sovereignty without self-determination. Go ahead. Our food system is being driven by political agendas, which I've mentioned, which is sometimes we don't even control because we don't even understand which are GMOs and which are not. So they take us advantage of the ignorance of our people, and also use of a lot of chemicals, and then also colonial policies imposed on foreign agricultural methods. These are some of the things which have made life very hard for indigenous peoples. Just go ahead because of time. Yeah, these are some of the work we are doing in my organization. We are now trying to promote agroecology, trying to promote using organic manure to grow those vegetables. We are now packaging, adding value to our honey, pure Ogiek honey, in which we have. Go ahead. So we really need full implementation of laws, policies which are governing or which are going to govern indigenous peoples in their land and territories. We also need to enact laws which are regulations to promote indigenous food systems and agroecology practices, which I've also mentioned. And also they need to advocate for free, prior informed consent and in all the projects which are happening within our land and territories, which should be very, very key. Go ahead as I go forward. These are some of the work we have been doing, advocating, documenting some of the initiative for indigenous-led food and land initiative to promote production of organic food for health consumption. Go ahead. These some of the we were having displaying and trying to let people know to understand how the exhibition of food, traditional food system. Go ahead. So as I conclude to say thank you, I say that I know I can discuss a lot, but I'll tell you that there is a lot happening in Africa. But I'm happy our country, some of the counties are beginning to really take into serious consideration to support agroecology and traditional food system. And they've been including us in processing, in trying to do documentation, which we are hopeful people will understand because of the serious health issues within the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for both giving the scope of the problem and suggesting solutions. Not only indigenous people, but other people might want to learn from this. As we will hear from other people on the panel too. And forgive me for interrupting before, but when I looked through your PowerPoints, they were so, I liked them so much, I didn't want the audience not to see them. So, so thank you, dear. And Alexis, the screen is all yours. Back to Canada.
Thank you so much, Eyal. This is a wonderful opportunity. Thank you for the privilege of being here and to share a little bit about what I know. Everything I talk about will be related back to mental health because that's my passion and that's my love. But to get started, I know I was already introduced a little bit, but I wanted to share a little bit more of an introduction because it will relate to what I'm talking about. So if you can see, I have what we call a talking stick here. And this talking stick was gifted to me by an elder who I worked with because he heard my story often. And so as you were already shared with, that I am Gwich'in. I am from the Gwich'in Fort McPherson Band, and Gwich'in people are followers of the caribou. So we come from Alaska, which is in the United States, and we move into the Yukon, which is far Northwest Territory in Canada. And my grandmother was born in a place called Moosehide Creek, which was in the Yukon. And as a young girl, she traveled with her family up to a place called Aklavik, which is in the far northwest corner of the Northwest Territories, and not far from Tuktoyaktuk, which is on the Arctic Circle. So my grandmother and my grandfather met in Aklavik, and they had 9 children and raised them along the Mackenzie River along their trap lines. So my mother grew up knowing about food from trapping animals and from giving gratitude to their gift of life. So this talking stick is a caribou antler, and it and when we talk about sustainability, when we give gratitude for an animal that gives its life, we don't just use pieces of it, we use all of it. So this antler is used, and then the talking stick is used in many circle ceremonies that I might do along the way. In here, we have some red felt, and the red felt is that as Gwich'in people, like many First Nations, we are sewers. And so we will do a lot of sewing, and we sew lots with the skins and the furs of the animals. Here we have some hide, and this hide is deer hide. And it's to remind me that there's more than caribou in the north, that there's also other animals, because sometimes we forget we just might like one or prefer one. We have here some beads, red and white beads, and down here as well. So the white beads are the connection of my spirit to the north, where I am from. And the red beads are my connection to the gift of healing that I do from time to time in my work in various ways. Again, these are jingles, which are about healing, and then horse's hair as well, which is about the spirit of the horse protecting people who are living through trauma. And so as a young girl, I was a cowgirl long before I was anything else. And I believe Creator gifted me with the protection of being connected to horses along the way. So that's a little bit about who I am and where I come from as a Gwich'in woman. When we think about our animals, there are many stories. I won't get into them, but we are always giving gratitude to the animals for whatever they give of their life for us, or they give of their self so for our sustenance as human beings. Also, I wanted to share that within Canada, we don't use Indigenous the same as it might be used internationally. Within Canada, it's a catch-all word that the government uses to put First Nations, Métis Nations, and Inuit together. yet we are very different. So we have around approximately, and I know it's more than what I'm going to say, 640 First Nations within Canada. We have 4 Inuit communities, which are along the Arctic coast and down along the East Coast, down into Quebec and into Labrador. And we have 2 to 4 different Métis nations. I don't know a lot about Métis, so I stay away from that. I speak to just what I know, and what I know is that of my Gwich'in heritage and ancestry. So within the Indigenous Peoples page on a website, they indicated that there's 476 million Indigenous people in the world across 90 countries, and that this makes up about 6% of the population, and that at least 15% of the poorest. And the reason I share that is because within Canada, of our 2021 stats, our census information, there are approximately 1.8 million Indigenous people in Canada, which represents about 5% of the total Canadian population. So you can see that we're in line with what the numbers are worldwide. And like I've already indicated, the number of First Nations communities, Inuit and Métis, and our numbers might be underrepresented because we don't always share within the census. So I will share a little bit more about my own Gwich'in people, and I'll also share what I've been taught from elders and knowledge holders along my own journey. One of the things that I do want to speak to or share with you is that one major health determinant that impacts First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people in Canada is food. And we often talk about food just in general. And we forget that, like as Daniel had already mentioned, it's a food system, or there might be different food systems. And within Canada, Agriculture Canada has created a food systems framework through which government initiatives or policies identify actually 3 components for the systems that we use today. One of them is the traditional agriculture and country foods, and this we always refer to as our food sovereignty. So when I talked about, the caribou, we do a lot of hunting of caribou. Within our Gwich'in community, we've started a new hunting program, which gives incentives to young people or to people who have never hunted before to learn about hunting, and then to share their stories of hunting. So it's getting back into the community, but we never do it as individuals, we do it within community, and our community can be the whole of Gwich'in within our area, or it might be our family or families. So we look at something like that. There's the new agriculture system, which is about raising animals and gardens in community. And we look at this through sustainability types of food system. And one of the things, if you've ever been in the far north or ever been in an Arctic type of environment, you know that there's not a lot of vegetation. There will be plants, there will be medicines to the environment, but there's not a lot of vegetation. And when I was growing up as a young girl, I can remember my mother and the community sharing that a horse was brought up there because they wanted to introduce farming in that area. But the horse didn't last long. It actually sank in the permafrost because the land wasn't designed necessarily for domestic animals. Now it was designed more for some of the wild animals who knew how to navigate the landscape and whatnot. But also at that time, the foods were more meats or fish, were berries, not a lot of vegetation. And in the last 5 to 10 years, greenhouses have been introduced into Nunavut. Just like it warms my heart so much. And not only have the greenhouses been introduced, they also introduced hydroponics in terms of learning how to grow the plants and providing more light. So right now there's lots of light in the north, but there will come a time when there's no light. And so you need the hydroponics in order to provide that food source for plants. So what this does is it helps reduce the cost of moving vegetation from the south to the north, but it also allows people to grow their community source in terms of food systems. And the last one is the food that's brought in from outside the community. So in the north, people have always, for many, many years, had food brought in when the government took over and thought that their ways were better than the folks who were living on the land quite well for many, many years. But in terms of doing that, then food had to be brought in. And initially it was flown in, sometimes it was shipped in. There is a highway called the Dempster Highway, which can now transport foods up. But again, you're looking at costs in terms of trucking and in gasoline and time and whatnot. So there is the idea that we can get the food source there. The other thing about food brought in from the outside, we call this our food security. And the security is all about stuff that's short term. And it's kind of like money thrown at something, but not really giving it more sustenance. And so when we try to do the sustainability and we get back into the community programs, we really are doing a lot to educate our people to return to our lands. And part of returning to the lands, I wanted to share a little bit, is that we regain our language, we regain our culture. And when we're doing this, we're now becoming back one with the land. We can still be on the land when we're in urban centers, which is wonderful. I look outside my high-rise apartment and there's gardens that are built on the rooftops and whatnot. We don't need lots of space. I have a little 2x2 plot, or we can have other little community plots, and people can learn to grow what is good for them. And then they have lots of community plots around. So all of this as well, I'll just touch on a couple of more points. One of the things that I wanted to share is when I was a young girl, I didn't understand a lot of government policies in Canada. And as I've become an old woman, and I love being an old woman, by the way, it's kind of like, wow, I wish I was this smart when I was that young. Anyways, it's that I understand now that the policies that the government implemented were for the government's use. They were never for the benefit of our First Nations and Inuit people. And I can remember asking my mother, why the government wouldn't give us farming seeds or stuff to do farming. And it was because we were doing really well as farmers. We could farm the land. We knew about the land. But the white European immigrants who were coming into Canada were complaining that they were feeling competitive and they couldn't compete with the Indigenous people of this lands. And so the government wrote policies that took aid away from Indigenous people. And folks don't realize that that harm has created a lot of harm. And when we talk about trauma and intergenerational trauma, that comes down through the lines. And so now we have to look at how do we heal from that trauma and not fix it. How do we learn to, as somebody has already indicated, work with what we have now? And so what I look at is, how are we doing as an individual? How do we grow and get back into our community? Cindy Blackstock says, as Maslow says, our security is at the bottom. And Cindy Blackstock says that, our self-actualization is at the bottom. Whereas when we continue to learn about ourselves, we then fit into our units, and then we fit into our community. And when we become community actualized, we are then working together to move forward in a good and healthy way. What is there else that I wanted to share with you? On terms of just quickly looking at the medicine wheel, when we are not feeding ourselves well, because we might be bringing in processed food or unhealthy food, I think of how when food is transported into the north, we'll sell rotting lettuce or we'll sell rotting vegetables thinking it's okay. But in the South, we'll say, no, you got to throw that out because it's not good. So, we have different levels of standards in terms of it's okay to give that rotting food to the Indigenous people, but it's not okay to give it to folks who are in an urban center. And so we have to be able to be mindful. How do we look after each other? And when I look back on the medicine wheel, I see that when we look after ourselves, we start to heal our minds, and we can be healthy emotionally and spiritually, so that we start to spread out, and we can connect with our units, and we can connect with our communities, and we can move in a healthy way to be better about what we're learning. But this is just the beginning. Warms my heart that we can do this. And just as one final note, in Ottawa here, I'm on the beautiful unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. We have a big Indigenous language conference happening, and thousands of Indigenous people from around the world are here to talk about the language revitalization and bringing it back, so that we can grow our cultures even more and become stronger in the people that we once were, before a lot of the colonial policies and impact have negatively affected us. So I'm going to leave it at that. Hopefully that's okay. And I'll pass it on to our next speaker. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alexis. A different perspective. We will talk, I think as we proceed, we will be richer and richer here. Leslie, all the way from Mexico. So now you're going back south. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for this invitation. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. There we go.
Yes, now it's perfect.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be here and represent Center for World Indigenous Studies and Center for Traditional Medicine, and to be part of this esteemed panel. You hear in my name, corn, the word for grain. I am a member of the Ashkenazi Jewish diaspora who escaped from the genocidal pogroms of Eastern Europe. My grandparents arrived in the United States as settlers in 1898, 1899. And very early on, having grown up in Boston, I was called to travel to Mexico. And I've been living and working in Mexico for the last 50 years, very fortunate to have been guided to live in an indigenous community on the coast of West Mexico. And in the middle 90s, I was invited to join and bring my Center for Traditional Medicine into the Center for World Indigenous Studies, which is an Indigenous directed nonprofit that was formed by at the request of tribal governments in the Pacific Northwest. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit about our work in the area of food security and food sovereignty. And I have to say that I so identify with and understand everything that our previous speakers have said, and I want to concur with those observations. Center for World Indigenous Studies, really, we think of ourselves as activist scholars. There's no point in learning, understanding, and doing research if it's not going to be applied and making change for social justice on behalf of Indigenous peoples globally. So we do research, education, policy, and international law. We were involved for 25 years in the development of UNDRIP. However, it became very clear over the last 50 years of policy and law development, not only in the Western Hemisphere, but throughout the world, that these policies and resolutions had no enforcement behind them. And so we turned our attention to enforcement mechanisms, and with certainly a focus on free, prior, informed consent, resource extraction. However, in the last 10 years have been working with Indigenous peoples, for example, Biafra in exile, helping them develop their government, but also working with the Yazidi, who, as you well know, have been subject to heinous genocidal interventions. And so our work with the Yazidi to develop their own government, also sovereignty, as we well know, is about sovereignty and self-determination around access to land, access to food, and control over those mechanisms of accessing the food. The Yazidi asked us to help them cope and deal and address and get justice for genocide, where clearly the International Criminal Court is not set up to deal with Indigenous peoples' needs. And so over the last 5 years, we've worked with an international group of people to establish the nation's International Criminal Tribunal, which is a fully formed charter and mechanism to bring the perpetrators of genocide to justice. And the other thing I'd like to mention about CWIS is we publish a peer-reviewed journal, and our upcoming special issue is on women's traditional medicine and women's traditional ecological knowledge. And we are receiving submissions from around the world to publish 2 volumes on this important topic. The Center for Traditional Medicine, as Dr. Yael Danieli introduced, was formed in the late 70s. We have been providing pro bono healthcare for Indigenous peoples in West Mexico, health programs, really around a concept called community-determined work. That means the community decides what's important to them, what the community wants to do, and then we collaborate around how we achieve those goals. We've worked mainly in the Pacific Northwest as well as Mexico around areas of food sovereignty, and to some degree in urban centers like Toronto with the Anishinaabe people, particularly around the transformation of acute illness into chronic disease and chronic illness. Diabetes, which is a disease, diabetes type 2, is a disease of colonization. It is not only a disease of food insecurity and sedentism, but it is a disease of nutrition trauma, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Our other work has involved looking at how climate change is affecting wild foods and nutrient levels in wild foods, particularly in India, and really looking at and responding to what Indigenous peoples from around the globe are asking of the center to transform and even reverse the load of chronic illness that is evolving with the transport and introduction of refined foods, particularly the poisons of sugar and refined flours around the world. And as a traumatologist and as a nutritionist, it's very important for us to recognize the bioindividuality of communities. There is no one right diet for everyone. And this speaks to the influence of colonial introduction of foods that are inappropriate to the environment. We see this in the Western Hemisphere that prior to colonization, prior to contact, there were no pigs, no cows, and no wheat. Among other things. And so the introduction, and no soy, the introduction of these foods into environments where they have no place being does not nourish the genome. It does not nourish the body, mind, and spirit of peoples to those locales. And we can look and apply these principles around the globe where we understand that Indigenous peoples hold the science and the wisdom around what foods are going to nourish Indigenous bodies. And so I have a list here of the preventable diseases. We work not only with interpersonal violence, but type 2 diabetes, digestive health. We know that there are extraordinary surgeries that are unnecessary, that particularly target minority populations, including indigenous peoples. I'll speak in the Western Hemisphere of because of the inaccessibility of good quality fats and the accessibility of poor quality fats in people's diets, leading to gallbladder disease that take out the gallbladder. And taking out the gallbladder of the body is like throwing out the garbage pail. Instead of saying, why is there garbage build up? Let's clean it out, and let's recognize that these poor quality oils are affecting indigenous bodies. And so we work with people around restoring and returning to natural food systems that nourish the gallbladder and the liver, not that cause it to become full and therefore taken out by health services that do not promote indigenous, not only food, but health systems. Certainly heart health and the problems of heart disease among indigenous peoples. And I'll speak mainly in the Western Hemisphere as it's linked to chronic stress and chronic trauma and PTSD. Issues of sleep, I mentioned PTSD and nutrition trauma. And I've given you here our definition of what we recognize as nutrition trauma, as the disruption of access to endemic, culturally and biochemically appropriate foods due to dominant external forces, colonization, globalization, and systemic marginalization, and the introduction of foods by transnational corporations and the replacement of local foods that are meant to nourish populations. And so a lot of our initiatives are based on the reversal of nutrition trauma and training. Certainly, indigenous communities hold the knowledge, but training and educating oftentimes medical personnel or health personnel who are often coming from outside the communities, sent in by, let's say, the Indian Health Service or whomever, who are carrying forth a federal policy that is not appropriate to local needs. And so we know, for example, with colonization, specific foods, medicines, and rituals have been outlawed and were outlawed for centuries. We think in Mexico of the sacred food amaranth, which was outlawed, and fortunately for this, the safety and the safeguarding of these special foods by indigenous peoples are really have been restored. And we see this all over the globe, where one of the main activities of colonization and subjugation is the outlawing of these sacred foods for nourishment. We see this, for example, in the Pacific Northwest, whose traditional foods have been very rich in natural fats, in the Oolican, and I know our esteemed panelist, Alexis Ford Ellis, knows about the value of the Oolican fat to nourish the brain, to nourish the body. We did not have ADHD. We did not have traumatic stress. We did not have diabetes when we had these natural fats and foods, rich in salmon, rich in the omega-3 fatty acids. Let's look at the Pacific Northwest as an example of that. So we're working with tribal communities. We're conducting research. We completed a study at the request of Muckleshoot tribal community to look at food deserts. Muckleshoot tribe is an urban tribe. And even the concept of tribe is a misnomer. It's a colonial concept that really is, in colonization, pushed diverse peoples onto reservations. And in this case, urban reservation. We're working with communities to do herbal medicine training programs and to really change policy that is a top-down policy from the federal government that says, no, we can't use herbal medicines. No, we can't use massage therapies. No, we need to use metformin for diabetes. And so really working to not only support and restore, but change policy along the way so that the IHS has less say over the healthcare that's delivered within the tribal communities. One of our initiatives was working with the herbal medicine group to create a documentary called Salal, Cedar, and Spruce, and it's accessible on YouTube if you want to look up and watch this documentary. We also have another documentary around a very sacred tree that produces a nut rich in amino acids, traditionally used by women as a galactagogue to enhance mother's milk, not only in children, but in pigs and in cows and everybody's children in the community. And it's so rich in amino acids, it's also a mood booster. And so this Kopomo tree is under threat from deforestation, and from the loss of access. And so this is what this movie, Kopomo, is about, what people are doing to restore this sacred tree that grows in very limited areas on the West Coast and East Coast in Maya country. It has the name Maya nut as well. And so the other way that we work is collaboratively with communities to conduct culture, foods, and medicines workshops, which range from foraging, preparing, sharing stories, remembering, and the restoration of feasting, which was always a traditional ritual that is now coming back. And here's some images to share from one of the culture, foods, and medicine workshops up with Quinault tribal community. And here we see our beautiful ancestral foods, our ulakan, and our salmon, our hazelnuts, so rich in omega-3s, and clams, sources of DHA and EPA for the brain. And look at these beautiful salmon fish eggs, so rich in the omega-3s, and those beautiful berries, and the importance of these anthocyanin-rich blue purple foods as antioxidants and anti-inflammatories. And some of the projects that have come out of this is Salish Country Cookbook, which is a cookbook around Salish food traditions and herbs, and it's downloadable from our website. And then we were honored to create a course in both English and Spanish called Native Roots. We wanted to work to support teens and their school teachers to become activist scholars for climate change and for traditional ecological knowledge, for traditional ways of learning, and restoring again among the young the recognition of the importance of these foods. And here is our bio-individual approach, a high-fat, low-carb diet among the Inuit. And my peoples, we're looking at a more moderate carbohydrate-rich diet, where we've got fermented dairy and these wonderful beets. Beets, by the way, being the most important medicine for the gallbladder and clearing it out. And look at the traditional indigenous foods of Ireland. No, not potatoes, which were brought during contact, but indeed salmon and those wonderful vegetables from the sea to nourish traditional Gaelic people's brains. And of course, the traditional foods of Mexico, corn. And one of our projects that came out of my work in the jungle was a book, a multilingual book, Medicinal Plants of the Jungle, in which the children from 5 years old to the elders to 90 years old participated in sharing stories and creating dialogues. And I love this one. I wanted to share this one on ajo, on garlic in particular, because it tells the resistance and the humor among the women, because they tell the story in which an auntie tells her son-in-law, you know, your daughter is ill and you need to make her a garlic soup. And he says, oh, but men don't cook. And she says, oh no, a good husband cooks for his wife. And so the women created all of these dialogues, and then these books were disseminated to everybody in the village. And so not only do we have traditional knowledge, but we have, you better take care of us a little bit better and cook for us when we're sick. And so this is also an accessible book if you wish to download it. And so that's just a little bit of the work that we do at the center. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. We learn more and more and more. Again, I urge you to share with the center anything that's published and anything that's in the media. Leslie, we have a media corner as well as a library. So please send us the links to the films you mentioned, that maybe we'll do another webinar that will include the showing of the films. But Alexis,
happy to.
You mentioned resources too, and Daniel, I'm sure you have yours, because we have the richest library on multi-generational issues. That's our focus, and it's in any discipline. It could be poetry, or film, or theater, or drama, or geography, or ecology, or wisdom. Okay, so feel free, please. We need it all there, so whoever comes in can learn from it. And we go back to Canada, believe it or not. But Andre, the screen is yours. You have to unmute. It's in the left side and the bottom. If you click under the pictures.
Got it. Got it.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Okay. I'm going to start my PowerPoint, but if you don't mind, I'll speak more than showing you the slides. This presentation is about First Nations condition in Canada. Alex is coming from the western part of Canada. I'm sure we'll have her own ideas about that. I'm from the eastern part of Canada, the French part. This map over there just shows where most of the...
We are not seeing the screen.
Oh.
Either Robbie or you.
Yeah,
Robbie, can you share the Andre's screen? Here we go. You have it.
You got it?
Yes, here we go. Beautiful.
Perfect. So as I was saying, I'm going to talk a little bit about First Nations tribes bands in Canada, but beyond that, beyond the actual tribes or bands, the two messages beyond my presentation are one is empowerment. I'm going to try to show you through this presentation what happens when populations, indigenous or others, are empowered and when they're not, which was unfortunately the case thanks to colonization for a long time in Canada. Now it's changing, and I'll show you how. And the second is the relation between food and identity, and culture and identity, because food is not just what you need to live. It's also part of your identity. And it's very important, especially for the First Nations people. So I'm going to try to show you a little bit of that. Now, the situation of First Nations in Canada was not, and still is not, all that great. There's more than 600 bands across Canada. Alexis had a more accurate number than I did. But what is important to notice is that out of all these bands of First Nations, 82% are obese or overweight. So it shows a poor nutrition status or practices. 1 out of 5 suffering from type 2 diabetes. 65% of households still feel food insecure. In some parts of northern Canada, it's even more than that. So, and one thing that people don't think about so much is that climate change is also affecting everyone, of course, but First Nations are very much so, especially in northern Canada, which is very much affected by global warming and so on. Yet at the same time, we see some paradox. So we're saying, oh, but this is all really going in the wrong direction. But yet we see in Nunavut, Nunavut is, for those who don't know, it's a very big region. It's bigger than Texas, for instance. It's in northern Canada. And it's a region that is self-managed, so where they have their own leaders, and so they have a lot of flexibility to manage. But what we noticed there is that communities who relied on diet made of 50% or more of traditional foods did not suffer from a single day without food or with food insecurity.
Amazing.
So it's really amazing. So there's something there. So, but the rest of the First Nation population, especially those that are affected by obesity and diabetes type 2, which is the majority of them. Why is that? A lot of actually the real reason for that is the result of colonialism. Along with that came unadapted health and education services, shift, especially that, a shift to dependency on imported from the South processed food products. So as a result of that, people's health really was very much affected. What is important to notice is that traditionally in First Nation systems, food systems knowledge, traditional foods, it's primarily passed by elders to the next generation. So that's really how it goes. Yet how nowadays, because of tablets and social media and whatnot, the younger people are less and less interested in that. So, which is a problem because we fear that traditional knowledge might be lost to some extent unless we address that. So, we find a way to mobilize the youth to carry on the traditions that were brought up by their elders. So indeed, First Nations are doing that. So they're trying to get organized and do a lot of initiatives to reverse that trend and change. For instance, in the Northwest Territories, Alexis must know that one, there's an initiative called Take a Kid Trapping and Harvesting. So it's a program that works with schools, First Nation schools, to train the kids into hunting, trapping, fishing, traditional food preparation, and outdoors in general. So this program, interestingly, was so successful that now they can't keep up with the demand. So more and more schools want to integrate that in their school program, which is very good. So it's one of the ways, I guess, to transmit this traditional knowledge to younger generations. And not all is doom and gloom. There are some other good initiatives. For instance, the Norway House, Cree. It says Norway House, but it's not in Norway. It's in Canada. It's the Cree Nation is a very important tribe in Canada. So programs were initiated to stimulate traditional fishing methods. And as a result of that, in the Cree community, which lives around, which is mostly around Hudson Bay and the northern part of Canada, 90% of food security was ensured. So compared to 60% insecure, it's a dramatic improvement. So empowerment made the difference there. How do you empower people? Well, you empower them by training them, by sharing knowledge. If it didn't come directly from the elders, then there are other ways to capture this knowledge and share it with people. So in Newfoundland and Labrador, in the eastern part of Canada, there was a project called Root Cellars Rock Food Skills Workshops. So they were organized to stimulate traditional food preparation and so based on the 4 P's: planting, picking, preparing, and preserving food. So it was an instant success. The Inuit community, which is basically in the northern part of Canada, is now gradually developing more and more private gardens, saving money, of course, on store-bought vegetables, which were typically imported from the south, greenhouses also. So a lot of initiatives, local initiatives, were stimulated by this project just by getting people together and getting them to talk about ways to restore traditional cultures and develop local food economy. There are other nutrition-based initiatives because indeed in the north, in the First Nations communities, there is a significant nutrition problem where people don't eat necessarily the food that is good for them because of colonization, the imported food that comes from the south and so on. So initiatives like this one, Feeding My Family, that's in Iqaluit, that's also quite far in the north. The use of social media because social media is the big thing, especially for young people, to interest them into traditional methods, traditional food, and ways to harvest it, to prepare it, to benefit from it. So it uses social media, radio, and other means of communication to educate people as to their traditional roots. So this was is indeed quite a success. In Nunavut, also in the north, they initiated because one of the things they noticed is that education programs called that way education were not necessarily culturally adapted to the reality of the First Nations people, especially in the far north. So they decided to develop materials that would be culturally appropriate, such as this one, the Nunavut Food Guide, which has been and is still used widely in the northern community.
Andre, sorry, is there a way to make the full slide seen, the left side also? It's sort of covered by the somebody from the audience asked they can't read the left side.
I'm not really sure how to do that. On my screen, I
Rabbi,
see the whole thing.
Rabbi, here you go. Perfect. Here
Okay.
it is. Perfect.
Very
Thank
good.
you so much.
Very good.
Okay.
And of course,
Thank
I'll
you,
make the
Amelia. Thank you for commenting on that. Go ahead, Andre.
thank you, Robbie. So of course, I'll make the presentation available to all of you if you want a copy after that.
And just in case the question keeps popping up, the full recording is available to all registrants at the end within an hour of the webinar. So not to worry, you will receive it all. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. So as I was saying earlier, nutrition is a big problem. Because of the loss of traditional foods and food preparation and methods, the nutrition condition of First Nations, especially in the north, has taken the wrong turn for many years. So now we're trying to change that. The First Nations are themselves trying to change that through education, information, workshops like this one in Yukon Nutrition Framework. So these are workshops where they organize initiatives such as community kitchens, sustainable harvesting activities, grocery basket costs, and so on. So there was a real appetite for that, for the communities to get together and to learn how can we improve. And indeed, that has been and is still quite a success. Again, it is the First Nation communities deciding to empower themselves, to get organized by themselves in a way that's appropriate to them. There's another one closer to me that's near Montreal, the Mohawk community, where, as is too often the case with First Nations, the rates of obesity, in particular diabetes type 2, are really extraordinary. Because of poor feeding methods, because people have abandoned the traditional foods and went on to processed foods of all kinds that are imported from different places. So what the Mohawk community decided is to teach kids from an early age, to teach them as to what the good nutrition is, what good food is, and what not so good food is also. So that's a program that has been initiated in schools and is extremely, extremely popular and beneficial, because immediately we saw an improvement in health condition of the community. By the way, getting children involved is really one of the key, because when they go back home, they teach their parents as to no, we should not eat that, we should eat this. So that has been really a success. So the Mohawk community has been. Now, where do we go from here? Well, we need to look at what works. And what works is, number one, empowering communities, getting them to take control of their own condition and develop methods that are adapted to their culture, to their traditions, to their reality. And also, of course, to develop local skills, to build up local champions. That's also very important, because I can come there as a foreigner or a European person coming up and telling them what to do, but it's never as efficient as having someone from the community to explain them what is good and why it is good and how to do it. So again, the message here is empowerment, empowerment, empower. Let's empower the children. And that's how we're going to go. There was a statement from the Ingano tribe, or one of the tribes in Canada. It captures it very well. It says, let's return to our food, our life, and our tradition. With our food, we will improve our health, we'll recover our culture, very important, and take care of the natural world. So that's the message really out of my presentation. Thank you.
It seems the message is quite in harmony of this webinar.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Danielle, are you with us? Thank you. Hi, dear. And this is the time to comment on each other's presentations, to make connections or to ask questions. Let's take 5 minutes for the panel, and then we open the floor to question and answers. Anybody wants to make a comment, to share, to ask? The floor is yours, and you can absolutely unmute.
Is it ourselves?
Please, go ahead,
Okay.
Daniel.
Yeah, first, let me appreciate the panelists for very in-depth information. Really, I think the message here is, how can we voice and empower our indigenous peoples or these communities to really embrace the issue of traditional food system, because we'll minimize our time going to the hospitals. We will save a lot of money, because, for instance, in Africa, very few people have insurances to go to hospital. And I think if they eat well, they will not even need much of the insurance. So what Andrea was just discussing, I really appreciate that, the generation issue of the children, because one of our worst challenge we have in Africa is the educated communities are thinking that going to have French fries and this kind of food is, you look more sophisticated, you look more empowered, not knowing that is where things are going wrong. So when they go to their homes and find that they have made some traditional vegetables, the young people say, no, I think I need potatoes, I need fried potatoes, I need this kind of food. And they take a lot of time with the fast food. We are witnessing in parts of Africa obesity, which was not there before. And now we maybe when we used to go to countries in Western world, we see people who are obese. We used to get concerned. But now it is coming to Africa in a big way. So I think I promote the issue of intergenerational transfer on how to help them to understand the traditional food, how to cook, how to do all that. So I really commend these presentations from all the participants. I hope we will get also some of the material from CSW.
Absolutely.
I hope, yes, so that some of us can use them to help our people, because those materials are very useful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's exactly the mission of our center, to bring people together so we enrich each other. It's exactly this. This is exactly right. Thank you. And what's interesting in the multi-generational, you covered so many generations, right? From Alexis to Andre speaking about the children teaching the parents, right? So it's intergenerational in all directions. Right. And Leslie was talking even about learning from the trees themselves. So, and then there is a symbolism, of course, of Mother Earth and the intimate relationship of baby with mother, and the intimate relationship of the indigenous people with Mother Earth. That includes the food, includes whatever grows. And as Alexis pointed out, using the animal totally, not wasting also. So we've learned so much. Yeah, so Leslie, please unmute. You were going to say something. Oh, Andre was going to say something. Okay, so Andre first, then Alexis. Okay. Go ahead. Andre, you had your hand up.
Thank you very much. No, I just wanted to emphasize the importance of empowerment. You know, in countries like mine, the US, other places in Africa and others, colonization has had a very severe impact on culture, but also on food systems. So with both of which are very much related. So that's what I tried to highlight there. You know, the food you eat defines who you are to a large extent. So that's really the message. So here in Canada, we're trying to encourage, to facilitate First Nations going back to their roots, which prove, in fact, statistically speaking, that it's beneficial in terms of health and other benefits to go back to the traditional roots of food as part of your identity. So, but people nowadays, people don't really acknowledge that. They think of food as just what to buy at the store. But no, it's part of who you are. So it's very important. That was part of my message. Thank you.
Leslie, you were going to say something?
Well, there's so many creative ideas here.
Exactly.
I wanted to mention, and this builds on what Daniel was saying around the messaging, colonization is still going on. Colonizing the mind and body through the enactment of ongoing trauma, the inaccessibility of these nourishing foods. And one of the concepts I think about, in trauma, we think about dissociation and not being in your body, not feeling and sensing. And when Daniel mentioned the French fries and the association of processed foods with sophistication, with having made it, being a wealthy person, there's so much messaging going on around this. It's racist, it is bigoted, and it reinforces and sends the message that you can be part of the bigger picture. You can be part of the privileged if you eat these refined foods. And so this is the way I think colonization continues to colonize the mind and body, and it leaves people not in their bodies. And I noted that in Andre's, one of the programs you were highlighting, Andre, they were teaching mindfulness and breathing, this idea of being back in the body so that you can sense, how do I feel when I eat French fries or a cupcake versus caribou or oolakan or salmon or hazelnuts. And so I think this is both a clinical issue we face as clinicians, but it is a policy issue. And I think just one final thought is that we need to reach the people who are making the decisions because they are dissociated, they are traumatized, and therefore they can't make these informed decisions unless they take part in this process as well.
Absolutely. And that's why, again, the main way the center works with policymakers is about informed advocacy. We don't go to the UN and say, oh, you're terrible people, you're doing this to us and this to us and this to us. We teach them. And we teach them, so it's also for them. You see, Daniel, what's interesting is your wisdom will be good for the government folks as well. It's not only for the indigenous people, but the government doesn't know it. So it's actually, and if you're talking about empowerment, you're there to make sure they learn from you. Not just for your people's sake, but for everybody's sake, for their sake too. And Alexis, this was interesting point about, right, you said about bringing the vegetables north. And your mother's comment that they won't bring it because if you can sustain it yourself, you won't need, right? She gave you some economic reason. That you will do such a good job with it.
Yeah.
I really liked it. It was so smart. Go ahead, Andre.
No, I was just going to say that one of the things we need to do is to move away from the top-down approach, where we come up with a big government program with subsidies and whatnot, where we tell people what they should be doing. I think we need to reverse that, to find a way to stimulate the listening, to people, especially from First Nations, but that's also true for other minorities, to let them say what they want to do, and then help work with them in building up the capacity to do really how they see their future, instead of us sort of imposing it on them. So empowerment has to do with that. It has to do with generating the power from local populations to decide what they want to do and have the means to do it.
I'll tell you a little story, which is not directly related, but one of my warmest moments when I used to work in Bosnia during the war. Sometimes I'd enter in a room and the smoking was so heavy that I couldn't breathe. So I literally had to stay outside, or they would come to kiss me. And I said, no, 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 please. So when I came back the next time, this one woman who was a very heavy smoker ran to kiss me, and I said, no, no, no. She says, no, 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 I quit smoking. So she wanted the hug. And you see, this was all about a hug. So, but that, yeah. Should we go to the very interesting folks here? Okay, we have a lot of comments here. Let's start. I mean, there was a specific question to you, Andre, about your map from Kara Corbin. The first map. Can you share them? How can you find a map? First of all, Kara, you can find it on our website because you'll receive the recording. But just in case Andre Kara wants to see the map in itself, could you put it in the chat, please? Okay, so that's from Kara. Okay, let's see. So people are very thankful for the knowledge. Then Elena Peleg asked, really interesting panel. Thank you so much, everyone. To anyone that would like to answer, do you connect the indigenous people struggles you represent here with the current generation long war of the Palestinian people? Does it resonate in your community? The food sovereignty issues you discussed are very relevant to Palestine as well. Anyone wants to respond to that? Okay, so let me go forward.
I would like to
ahead.
respond
Go ahead,
just
Lucy.
briefly. It's not my area of expertise, so I'll speak as an individual who wants to say that I think we see the starvation by the Israeli government of the Palestinian peoples currently as an act of genocide. And we see the silence around the world about this and the failure to act in any substantive way as collusion. And I think it has to be stopped. Food is the essence of life.
Alexis, you have your hand up?
Yes. So I was thinking a lot about this, and two, I guess in a way, and it's where my passion comes from when I think about my own First Nations here in Canada. And I think I shared at a previous gathering or connection with a few of us, is that I haven't gone outside of Canada, because part of it is I don't need to see world problems or third world conditions outside of Canada. All I have to do is go to a First Nations oftentimes. And what has happened is that a lot of the struggles that we have, people think that we brought them on ourselves. But if you look at the history of the policies and the political infighting that has gone on, that's where a lot of the damage has come. And somehow now we think we have to get back to our grassroots. We never left our grassroots. We had it taken away from us. And yes, there is that problem in Palestine and with Israel. And we want to blame in order to say it's their problem, it's their fighting, and it's theirs. And we're forgetting that governments are creating a horrible situation and they're making people suffer for their decisions. These folks don't want that. We know that. We didn't want it as Indigenous folks here in Canada, but we are the result of horrific decisions being made by people who think that they are better than others and putting themselves in positions of power, and it takes a whole nother roadmap. And it's not that, you're right, food is an essential, but if we can't stop this infighting up here, this is never going to be looked after down here. And many of our people have starved. We can go into stories about residential schools, about the missing and murdered Indigenous women, about our children who were beaten and starved in residential schools. That's all happened because of really bad decisions and thoughts about who we were as brown-skinned people in our own country. So there is no right answer. There is nothing that's going to resolve it at this point in time. And what is happening is horrific. And what we can, I don't know how we can. My daughter asked me the other day, she goes, I want to help, Mom, but if I send money, will they even get anything? And I said, I don't know. I said, we have to find, the only way we can really help is if we go there and help. And then we take stuff. But that's
Thank you, Alexis. And please, everyone, not only our library, but we have numerous webinars on Indigenous issues. One is more brilliant than the other. Listen to them, learn from them. And the same, in our library, we have this book, the International Handbook of MultiGenerational Legacies of Trauma, which I published in 1998. And it has 6 chapters, a whole section on Indigenous people. So please, those of you who want to learn, there's so much here to learn from. Let me continue to attend to the chat and the questions. Ayesha Talreja Otaleja asks, forced starvation and forced food insecurity, cutting of access to land and traditional food is embedded into the Settler colonial genocides playbook in the past and today. Okay, let me go on to Hope Dove. Starting with the disregard and indifference encouraged regarding breastfeeding, lack of support, objectification of women's breasts. Lowest rate of breastfeeding in Canada is in the Indigenous women. Really? Hope, I had no idea. Did you know that? Canadians, Andre, Alexis, did you know that in your own country, the lowest rate of breastfeeding is among the Indigenous people?
Yes, I knew that, unfortunately.
I had no idea. See, so it's not only the wisdom of our panelists, it's the wisdom of our audience. Thank you, and stay in touch with us, please. So maybe you can teach us in the next one too. Fahimi Ali, subject-based education, not imposition of dominant powers of colonizers. That's a nice way of putting it. Okay. What else? So Andre gave Kara, okay. You have the webinar. Okay, very good. All the webinars in the chat. Okay. Everybody loves your presentations. Wonderful panel. And Fahim Ali, to keep indigenous people from being self-sufficient by cultural genocide and land dispossession cannot be corrected without the application of justice.
Mhm.
Very important. That's a whole other webinar.
Mhm.
Actually, usually I wait till the end of the webinar, but let me use your comment, Fahim. Our upcoming webinar on September 15 focuses on the Haitian people and their struggle for justice. And it's going to be called Unveiling the Legacy, Scholarly Reflections on Haiti's, quote, double debt of 1825. You will learn, I promise you, you will learn a lot about that from the best around the world. And we have a whole series on what I call reparative justice, not just any justice, but justice that repairs. And not only at the outcome of the justice process, but during the process. So, Rahim, if you're interested in that, please listen to the whole series. Okay, can you put the link to the recommended book in the chat, please? It's in our library. If you go to our library, the first thing you see is this book. Rabbi, could you do that, please? Rabbi? I will put it, but I'm talking at the same time. So, okay. Okay, let's go on. Climate change. Yeah, that is Nekabari. I'm not re-acknowledging. Oh, Mary. Our Mary Fabry. Truly important information shared today by our panelists. I'm deeply appreciative. Thank you, Mary. Nekabari Nina says, climate change is destroying livelihood in Ogoniland, Nigeria. The palm wine is a special delicacy in all of Ogoniland. However, water sources are drying up and the seeds of the palm are no longer being spread by tidal water flows, making it difficult for the indigenous palm wine tappers to earn incomes and thus driving many into poverty and destitution. Thank you so much. I mean, we have a very educating audience, huh? Amazing. Thank you. And stay in touch with us for the next one. Maybe for the next one on climate change. So Nekabari, please be in touch, write to us. Don't forget. Okay, let me go on. David G. 3 stories from Manitoba, Canada. One, when a Minister of Northern and Indigenous Affairs, he is one, he's the one. I visited schools on remote reserves. Thank you, David, for coming. And noted the health text was from Georgia and spoke of sources of nutrition as being oranges, etc., and local meats like pork, totally inconsistent with the local available foods. Canada produced more recently books of the nutrition food in local foods. 2, I visited Nunavut in 1999 and visited grade 3 computer lab classes in Iqaluit in the east and Cambridge Bay in the west. asked students what was their favorite website. Both said Backstreet Boys and Spice Girls. I served on the Vanut Planning Commission as only non-Inuit and witnessed the self-determination starting there. Thank you so much, David, for coming, for attending the webinar and for this story. And please write to us, stay in touch with us for the future webinars. Okay, you do have the, whoever asked for the book, you have it here. Okay, Amelia Merchant, Limit and quit. Okay, I could never do that. Thank you, she said that in her language. Thank you for sharing your collective knowledge and wisdom. Thank you. You have the handbook in the chat. Jel Claire says, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to everyone involved and a special thank you to my wonderful professor, Dr. Leslie Korn, for inviting me to join this wonderful webinar. I feel incredibly fortunate to have been part of this experience. Thanks to all. And Kara Corbin, again, how to sign up for future webinars on your website. If you registered to this one, you should from now on receive the invitation of all others in the future. And we have one more question from Amelia Merchant. Wonderful, inspiring presentation. Thank you all. For those of you who undertake research initiatives with First Tribal Nations and Indigenous people, can speak a little about how you work with them through FPIC, the processes, protocols, to ensure protection of Indigenous knowledge and sacred cultural practices. Very, very important. Any one of you wants to pick that up? Leslie, Alexis?
Maybe I can say something.
Wonderful. Thank you, Daniel. I didn't say Daniel.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm just concerned because you mentioned about the protocols, and from our community, we have come up with what you call by cultural protocols, and these are dealing with research because we realize there are many people coming to our community to do research for their PhDs and master's degrees, and they could just pick any Ogiek young man or woman and take them to the community without the permission of the people.
Yeah.
So this free prior informed consent is critical. Most recently, again, we came up with what we call free prior informed protocols. These protocols also helps us so that you don't just move in. We have the Ogiek Council of Elders. They are the one to approve what kind of research, how you go, what you come out of that research, how will we get it back? Will we get even a copy of the document you'll publish? When you publish, do you acknowledge the community? Do you acknowledge the people? And what do you benefit, access and benefit sharing mechanism also following the Nagoya Protocol is supposed to be followed. And all these things are very important. So the only challenge we always have with protocol is sometimes when our government doesn't really accept to more or less accept our protocols. Sometimes they say like, oh no, is it linked to the constitution of the countries or some of the policies within the country? But we have now tried to domesticate, and because of Convention on Biological Diversity, most of them have now started accepting some of these biological protocols. Thank you.
So, and I
Thank you,
can,
go ahead. Go ahead, Alexis.
what Daniel is saying is actually a lot of what happens within Canada too. There's a lot of appropriation going on, especially by academias, because they will do the research without really visiting the communities or even acknowledging maybe who has written certain information or where a teaching has come from. My daughter is a lawyer, and her area of expertise has been growing in Indigenous copyright and intellectual property. So she's becoming very specialized in helping many First Nations, Inuit and Métis, learn how to protect their not only their research, but their goods. We have a cousin who is a couture designer, and just teaching her how to maintain her signature earrings, her clothing designs. And we talk about it all the time in terms of, and that's why I say I can speak to what I know of Gwich'in people, but I can't go and tell you the teachings of the Algonquin people or the Anishinaabe people, because I will learn them when I'm with elders, but they are not going to gift me with that teachings because I am not Algonquin or Anishinaabe. I will know the Gwich'in stories, and those I can share, but oftentimes we'll have many colonial people just think that they can share our stories or our culture without actually giving credit to where credit is due. And you can always tell if somebody doesn't have permissions, because they will not acknowledge that person in their presentation in terms of where that information has come from. So it's really hard, but it is growing. And I work in an area where we push back on government all the time. So not a problem for me. I figure, and that's why I like getting old, is like, man, what are they going to do? Fire me one day? Then I'm going to have to tell them how to do that even. So needless to say, we have to push back on government, because government is made up of people, and those people need to know about all the cultures, not just what they think in their mind or what they've been raised with. Anyways, that's my thoughts on it, but just thoughts.
Okay.
I'm not right on it. I just thoughts.
Let me add, Amelia, that exactly a year ago, on August 9, we had another brilliant webinar by Amy Bombay, who is the foremost Canadian researcher, Indigenous Canadian researcher, and a colleague from the United States. I'm too excited to remember the particular names today, but please do listen to that. And if you want to be in touch with her directly, please write to me, and I will put you in touch. Now, we do have a surprise, a little surprise. And actually, we had a big surprise by having the story, David's stories. But we have another little surprise, because it's in anticipation. And David, thank you for adding more. Oh, fantastic. Wait, David added, check out, he added a link. This is very important. Rabbi, please send it to me separately. I'm a board member, co-lead for international involvement in advancing our vision, mission. Very important to recognize the increasing appreciation that Indigenous people include red and black and yellow races who were colonized. And wonderful, I see your email here too, so we will be in touch with you. Okay, there was one other person I promised to acknowledge, Alex from Batua. I am BC Alex from Batua, Indigenous people in Uganda. He says it was very educative for us. We look forward to share about the Batua people, and indeed, our next webinar will include. Alex, do you want to say something just to give us a taste, please? Go ahead. You have the mic, I believe. Do you see it?
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know. everyone is hearing from me. Yeah, thanks very much for this event. It's been my first time to be here. I'm sorry I was not able to be among the panelists today, but still, it's very important because I had to first know how it all goes and make the proper preparations. Yeah, so in the coming webinar, I will be having a lot to share. But shortly, I have learned and I will have something to share with our Batwa indigenous people here in Uganda. There is a road of, a wrong journey we have realized that we have to walk because we have been detached or we have been separated from our ancestral land, which is the forest. And so we don't have access to our traditional food. So we have been suffered those colonial agendas, and they have touched us from accessing our food, and most of the Bata have become malnourished. But so far, we are struggling to bring back food security through the agroecology system. And I've seen our brother Daniel from Kenya sharing about the important thing we have to integrate. But though we have the very serious issue of land question because we just live on small pieces of land. So we have land here. We will start working on utilizing the small land we have and try to bring the seeds, though it's difficult because the seeds are locked out within the forest. But we will advocate slowly by slowly and have access to those seeds and bring them to the small gardens we have so far as we advocate for access to more piece of land or access to our food, traditional food directly from the forest. So to be honest, this was very educative and I was glad to be part of it.
Don't waste all your knowledge now, or you're going
to
to be in the next webinar.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Alex, for attending. We're looking forward to having you in the next one. Nola Butler Beard says, as I look at the outline of the International Handbook, I can't help but wonder why the abduction and enslavement of Africans isn't included, especially since the US model of enslavement economic was used by the Nazis to frame the Holocaust. It's legitimate on its own right, and please look at chapter 24. It's actually a brilliant chapter. Black Psychological Functioning and the Legacy of Slavery, Myths and Realities by William Cross Jr. I think you would love it because it's very much in the direction of this webinar. It's in the Indigenous section. It's chapter 24. It's very much in the direction of the atmosphere of this webinar, which is, it focuses both on the suffering, but also on their great contribution in health. So please, after you read it, please be in touch. Tell me what you think. Alexis is going to have to sign off in 8 minutes. Wait. We will. Sorry. Okay. David Newman, again, wonderful. Kluane River story in Pacific Coast region of USA is instructive. So is emergence of indigenous laws, including tribal law decision to give standing to the Kluane River at the right as a person. David, it sounds like you too might be in the next webinar. Who knows? Okay. I have that feeling. But so I did mention to you the upcoming webinar on Haiti on September 15. It will also have translation both to Haitian Creole and to French, and very likely also to Spanish, but that's not sure yet. So you're very much invited to that. Very difficult story. Oh, we have two more questions. I have to ask them, please. Okay, from Charles Uregia. Thank you for this educational workshop. Daniel, good for being there for Africa chapter. Culture is indeed identified by the food people eat, especially in Africa. I still recall many conferences we participated in together. I need to get together with Andrew if it is possible. If you invite me to eat with you, I'm coming too. Okay, and Richard Miller writes, several have mentioned community-based nutrition. Are these groups or organizations which are using technology to implement culinary medicine, local foods, and individualized food as medicine menus based on individualized community members-based practices to serve life's health journey? Leslie, I think this is for Leslie, sort of. Where's Leslie?
Have to go.
She disappeared. Was she the one who said she had to go? No, you did.
Yeah.
Oh, too bad. If you write it as an email, I'll send it to her. Okay. Okay, but I promised you also that we will have last word from everybody before we leave. So, where is Leslie?
Leslie
Remington,
had a
can you
patient,
get
so she
her?
had to leave.
She
No,
said,
it's
I regret I need to leave as I have a patient.
Oh, she wrote that. I
Yeah,
didn't
she wrote
see
that. Yep.
Okay, very good. Okay, too bad. So she didn't give us her last word, only her first words. So, but the floor is yours. My three esteemed colleagues for the last words for me and to the audience and to the center. But of course, we'll stay in touch. What would you like to leave people with? And Alexis, you can be the first.
yeah, because I have to leave in a few minutes. as
Okay, so think about
I
it.
was just thinking really hard in terms of like I always want to leave on a high note, and I recognize there's lots of good information out there. And the big thing for me is if you're not sure about something, just connect with a community and find out a little bit more about what they have to offer. It's not always good to Google. It's better to pick up the phone and call somebody at a band office or a chief or somebody, a community member, because folks are always willing to share. There's such good things happening, and we can actually, whatever we do small, we can spread it and make it a community no matter where we are, and we can always grow and help one another. So for me, it's always walking a path in terms of kindness, caring, and love. And those things seem to, I won't say everything is resolved by love, but lots of good intention makes lots spread around in a good way. So thank you so much for having me here. Wonderful to connect with Andre and Danielle and Leslie, and to be a part of this amazing panel. So thank you so much.
Wonderful, thank you. Now you can fight with each other. Go ahead. Who wants to be
Okay.
Go
Let me
ahead,
say,
Daniel.
yeah, I thought I was a panelist, but I became a student also. I learned a lot from the panelists, and I can say that it is us to make a decision about the future of our food system. And in Africa, for instance, a lot of cooking oil coming every day with all types, and it's killing our people. And this kind of food system, or which are being used for money to market, is killing our people. And we have to be careful. As Alexis was saying, let Google not be a driving force for us, but let's do it. For us who are fortunate to be within the indigenous people setup, let us go back to our roots and enjoy what was best for our ancestors.
Amen.
God bless you.
Amen.
Well, for me, if I may take the floor, I would just add a little bit to the concept of empowerment. I try to emphasize in my presentation the importance of empowering communities so that they themselves are best. We acknowledge that they're best to define their future. But empowering is not just delegating powers, it's providing the tools also to materialize the future as they see it fit. So empowerment, building capacity, that's really the way to the future. And let's listen. That's really the key part of my message. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I can't thank you enough, guys. This was truly both moving and smart and so educational in so many ways. And I hope we stay in touch and keep centering with each other. And join us again and again, please.
Thank you.
Take care from the bottom of my heart. Bye-bye.